prediction video for the Ultimate Fighter 28 finale. Let's start at the bottom. I know there's two cards this weekend, but the other one hasn't been finalized yet. Once that's finalized, I'll make a prediction video for that. But for this one, the first fight is Ronnie Barcelos versus Chris Gutierrez. And to me, Chris Gutierrez is like a decent striker wrestler, but I just think that Ronnie's much better. I think Ronnie's takedown defense and striking are overall a lot better. I haven't really seen either of these guys fight a ton, but I saw Ronnie's last fight and he looked really good. And like I said, I just don't think Chris will be able to get this to the ground. I think if it's a striking fight, Ronnie's better. And I got Ronnie winning by first or second round knockout. Next, we got Tim Means versus Ricky Rainey. And this is the same thing. It's two strikers, and I just feel like Tim Means is better. I don't feel like either of these guys are probably going to take it to the ground. I think this is going to be a striking fight for however long it lasts. But I just see Tim Means overwhelming Ricky Rainey eventually, whether it's in the second or third round, but I say he wins by knockout. Next, we got Roosevelt Roberts versus Daryl Horcher, and this is 100% just who can keep it where they want it. If Roosevelt can get this to the ground, he'll probably win this fight pretty easily. If Daryl Horcher can keep it on the feet, I think he'll win pretty easily. I'm leaning towards Daryl Horcher. I know that Roosevelt Hoover looks really good, and he looked really good on that episode of Dana White Looking for a Fight, but the guy he was fighting was a weight class below him and was just a super late notice replacement. To me, I've seen Daryl Horcher look really, really good with his takedown defense. I know he's 1 and 2 in the UFC, but when you look at who he lost to, Khabib, and then fucking the other guy, that really, really good wrestler, I feel like, you know, from what I've seen, he does look really good. I think his striking and takedown defense are really solid, and I'm not going to be surprised if he pulls out the upset, and that's what I see happening. I think Daryl Horcher keeps on the feet and just outstrike Roosevelt to get a close decision win. Next, we got Leah, can't say this chick's last name, versus Julia. And this is another striker-grappler thing. I think Leah's the way better striker, but I think if Julia can get this to the ground, she's the much better grappler. And I see this kind of going like Julia's fight in the Ultimate Fighter, the first one, where she got beat up a little bit, but eventually dragged it to the ground and won by submission. I think, you know, Leah will be able to keep Julia off for a little bit, but eventually Julia will get this to the ground, and when she does, I just think her grappling's way too good, and I think she's going to win by submission. Next is Marcus Green versus Michael Baptista, and, you know, another striker-grappler thing. I think if Marcus can keep this on the feet, he'll probably catch Baptista sooner or later and win by knockout, but I just don't think that's going to happen. I think Baptista must have been hurt in that second fight in the Ultimate Fighter, because he did not fight like how he fought in his first fight. Like, in his first fight, he was super aggressive, and he basically just beat the shit out of that guy who I thought was the favorite to win the whole season. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think if Michael Baptista goes into this fight and he's not injured, he'll just take Marcus Green down at will and just kick the crap out of him. I think his wrestling is just way too good for this guy, and that's what I see happening. I think Michael Baptista just wins by knockout or TKO in like the second round from ground and pound. Next, we got Joseph Benavidez versus Alex Perez, and this is just 100% like where's Benavidez at this point in his career, and to me, he didn't look that bad against Sergio Pettis. I thought he won. I thought that Sergio Pettis, you know, even though he sought the takedowns, I mean, his back was against the fence the whole entire fight, and I wish there was a better like judging criteria for some of these fights sometimes, because like I said before, I don't know how they score fights sometimes, because I've seen other fights like that where they win, and then there's fights where they lose where they do the exact same shit. And like I said, I wish it was just more clear cut when it came to like holding guys against the fence and whether people are moving forward or backwards, because like I said, I've seen fights where guys move backwards the whole fight and they'll win, and then vice versa, fights where they move back the whole fight and they win. You know what I mean? It makes no fucking sense half the time nowadays, and they need to be way more clear scoring-wise on what wins and what loses. But either way, like I said, to me, I think that Benavidez is the much better wrestler going into this fight. I think that striking-wise, you know, Perez looked really good in his last fight, and he could overwhelm Benavidez on the feet, but I don't see it happening. I think that overall, grappling-wise, Benavidez is definitely way better. I just think Benavidez is going to catch this guy in a guillotine sooner or later, in all honesty. I think they're going to be wrestling, and eventually Benavidez jumps the guillotine. I think this fight will be like the Tim Elliott fight, but much closer. I don't think Perez is going to dominate him like Tim Elliott was. And like I said, I think that Benavidez is eventually going to catch him in a guillotine, probably in like the second round, because Perez loves to grapple. So that's just what I see happening. Next, we got Rick Glenn versus Kevin Aguilar, and this is just going to be a back and forth slugfest for however long it lasts. But I just feel like Rick Glenn's going to win this fight. I think he's way bigger. I feel like Rick Glenn is essentially a big featherweight, small lightweight versus a guy who's a natural bantamweight, and I think this fight's at 135, 145, something like that. And I just think Rick Glenn is just so fucking big compared to Kevin Aguilar. They're both strikers, but he's just going to have the size and, reach advantage and everything. And like I said, I think this will be back and forth for as long as it lasts, but I just think, like I said, Rick Glenn's size and reach is just going to be too much for Kevin, and I think Rick Glenn's either going to win by decision or knockout. Next, we got the main card, Ji Kim versus Antonia Shevchenko, and to me, I just feel like Ji Kim is average. She's got decent striking, decent grappling, but I think Shevchenko's just way better everywhere. I don't think Kim's going to be able to take her down whenever she wants. I think, for the most part, this fight will be on the feet, and Shevchenko's just going to edge out every round and win 30-27 decision. Next, we got Darren Stewart versus Edmund. Can't say this guy's last name. And this is another fight. It's going to be an amazing back-and-forth striking fight for as long as it lasts, but I just think Darren Stewart's got the better chin, and I think he's just going to outlast Edmund. I think, like I said, I don't know when this fight will end, but when it does, I just see Darren Stewart being the guy with his hands raised. I think like I said, I think he's just more durable. Striking-wise, they're probably about even overall, but like I said, Darren Stewart's just going to outlast this guy and eventually win by knockout, probably in the second round. Next, we got Pedro Mahoz versus Brian Caraway, and this just depends where Brian Caraway's at in his career, because I feel like this is a fight that he could win. He's fought really great jiu-jitsu guys a bunch of times before. Striking-wise, they're probably about even. Mahoz probably hits a little bit harder, but the biggest thing is if Brian Caraway shoots for takedowns, will he get caught in that guillotine? He's been submitted before, and, he does shoot for, shitty takedowns from time to time just to get fights to the ground, and, I mean, Mahoz will jump on that guillotine right away. Like I said, Brian Caraway probably works on that defense a lot because he's trained to alpha male a bunch of times, but Mahoz is, a different level of guillotine. It's really tough just because Brian Caraway's been away for so long. If he was more active, I'd probably pick him, but he hasn't, and because he hasn't been active for, a while, even when he does fight, it's, big gaps in between fights. Because of that, I have to go with Mahoz. He's just way more active, and he's been looking better every fight, so I got Mahoz winning by guillotine, probably in the first round. Next, we got Macy, I can't say this chick's last name, versus Pinea, and Pinea, to me, just looks much better overall, in all honesty. I feel like Macy looked good in her 2 fights, but she just fought some mid-level chicks. And to me, Pinea, her record inside and outside The Ultimate Fighter was always great. I felt like she was the huge favorite going into the show, and I don't see anything different. I think that she keeps us on the feet because she's the much better wrestler, or takes it down if she needs to. And I think that her striking and wrestling game are just going to be too much for Macy. I think that this is kind of like when Rose fought Carla Esparza. I think Macy looks like a big up-and-comer, but when you look at their skill sets at this point, I think Pinea is just way farther ahead of her at this point, and I just feel like Pinea is going to win by decision. Next is Juan Francisco versus Justin Frazier, and to me, Justin Frazier, he fought a guy who couldn't wrestle, and then I have no doubt in my mind that Batista was injured going to that fight, and he knocked him out. It was 2 good wins on his part, but to me, I feel like Juan fought, 2 really good strikers and just showed that he's such a good grappler. Justin's got decent wrestling, and I definitely think that in the first round, he has a good shot at winning by knockout, but I definitely don't think his conditioning is as good as Juan's is. And I think the longer this fight goes, the better chance Juan has of winning. And in all honesty, I think that Juan's the much better wrestler. I think if Juan can get this to the ground, he's going to dominate him, and that's what I see happening. I think sooner or later, Juan gets this to the ground, and eventually Justin's going to give up his back, and when he does, Juan wins by rear naked choke. Like I said, Justin could definitely win this fight in the first round. His striking is good enough, and his wrestling is okay enough to catch him, but I just don't see it happening. Finally, we got RDA versus Kamaru Usman, and this is just entirely about, RDA. If he can keep this in a striking fight, I think he wins this fight all day. If Usman, keeps him against the fence and just beats on him, he'll probably win. I think on the ground, overall, RDA is better. But I just think this is going to be a striking fight for as long as it lasts, and I think RDA is the better striker, and I wouldn't be surprised if RDA eventually catches him, but, Usman could definitely, do what Colby did and just keep him against the fence for most of the fight, but I just think that RD is the much better striker, and I think if he worked on getting off the fence, then he should be able to win this fight by decision or knockout. Thanks for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe.